Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What Drives You. I'm Stan Windhorn, and with me, as always, is my good buddy and co-host, Carl Bauer.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited about our guest today, Stan. Why don't you share a little bit about Miss Kylie?
Actually, Carl, I was at the Lucky Rabbit, which you are familiar with here in the Austin area, for bike night. There was a bunch of people out there with their bikes, and you may remember about a month or so ago, we had on What Drives You, our guest was Joe from the Law Tigers. They're motorcycle attorneys. And we were just talking a little bit about the episode, and he goes, I know someone you need to meet. And so he brought me over and introduced me to Kylie, and Kylie shared her story with me, and I was just so moved by it that I wanted to have her as a guest, and she was kind enough to do it very, very quickly because it was a little less than a week ago that we met. Anyway, I want to introduce Kylie LaFever. Kylie, welcome to What Drives You.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, first of all, Kyla, we met on bike night at the Lucky Rabbit. So, are you a fan of motorcycles in general?
I am a writer. I've been a writer for a little over 20 years.
And what are you what do you ride?
So the latest is the Live Wire Del Mar.
That's the electric bike. Oh, that's right. We
Yeah.
talked about that outside.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, while we were there, you were telling us or telling me a very heart-touching, heart-wrenching story about your son Thomas. And that kind of drove you to starting the Thomas LaFever Foundation. But I'm just going to kind of let you tell us all about kind of what happened with Thomas, and then we can talk about what has happened since then. This is truly taking something that was just horribly traffic and or tragic and turning it into something positive. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Thomas and what happened?
Thomas, so I actually had two sons. It's funny how they're raised the exact same way and they are complete opposites. Um, my oldest, everyone says their kids are wonderful. That is a lie. Um, my oldest son gave me a run for my money. He is a wonderful boy or man. He's actually on mission right now with the Army. He's 21. Um, but I would have paid good money to see him go through boot camp. He needed to be knocked down a couple of notches
All right.
where and he's very intelligent, very athletic. Thomas, he this kid was just sweet. I mean, everyone liked him. He was a hard worker. He just represented kindness.
Okay.
And, he could study so much and he'd still just do okay. You know,
Mm.
he he was going to high school, 11th grade. He also rides. Our whole family is riders. Um, but he would do half day in regular school and then he would do a half day in trade. He was a welder. He actually went outside of school and got his welding certificate.
Oh, okay.
So he was an intelligence in other ways.
Sure.
Um, but it was the start of Spirit Week, a Monday. It's very strange because both my boys are kind of quiet, but don't really like to speak on the phone. The night before the accident, he called me and we spoke for 2 hours, like real conversation.
Oh,
And so it was almost like a foreshadowing now that I look back at it. But it was the start of Spirit Week, a Monday, September 30th. And it actually wasn't his bike that he was on. His dad, he flips bikes. And I think Thomas's bike needed his carburetor cleaned or something, so his dad allowed him to ride this bike, which I'm not super happy about that because for
yeah.
obvious reasons, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
they think there was something mechanically wrong with it. I don't think it was looked over, which I'm not blaming his father or anything. Accidents are accidents, but he was so excited because that day he was going to go to school dressed as a minion. He had all the stuff in his backpack. So from my understanding with the police reports and with the investigators, I believe a car had cut him off. Um,
Mm.
Knowing Thomas, he's been on two wheels since he was probably about 7, whether it was a dirt bike or a motorcycle. He was actually a really good rider. Um, in my mind, I'd like to think that he laid down his bike to not hit anyone and hurt anyone. They did a investigation and it looked like the throttle had stuck. So
Mm.
his bike didn't actually hit another vehicle, but his body hit the back of another car and he rolled underneath that car. To get him out, they decided to drive over top of him. And from the reports, I was informed that he didn't die right away. Um, I also found out that there was probably 8 to 10 bystanders, and instead of someone taking action, they took out their phones and they videotaped him until he died.
Mm.
And I ultimately got sent that videotape.
Oh my gosh.
EMTs came, which it takes time for them to get there. When they got there, it took them 15 minutes to get his heartbeat back. Um, which I'm grateful for because I had time to spend with him in the ICU. I obviously he wasn't conscious.
Yeah.
Um, but I got to hold his hand and kiss his face, and we always had the rule, like I know Texas is a no helmet, like, but we always had the rule helmet. He
Right.
did have a brain bleed, but at least his face didn't look injured. Um, the damage to his body was, I mean, there was so much skin and tissue missing from his right side that the asphalt had ground down his bones.
Oh
He
my
had
gosh.
a broken pelvis. He had 2 collapsed lungs. He had a brain bleed, amongst many other things. Um, Day after day, I'll probably pronounce it wrong, propofol, which keeps you in a state of coma. And I understand with my background, I understand why they were doing this, but it's different when you're with your baby.
Sure.
They would remove that medicine every hour on the hour because he was a minor. Um, Not that I would have left, but being 17, a parent had to be there 24/7. Um, but they would remove that every hour on the hour to do a neuro check. And the only way that they could get him to respond was through pain. So every hour I had to watch them twist his broken pelvis or
Mm.
twist his nipples. And so we were informed that on October 3rd, the night before, October 2nd, it was a terrible night. I think when I first saw him, I knew that it was not good.
Yeah.
I was trying to be optimistic, but I knew that if he had survived, he probably would have had postures, which he would not have been verbal. He would not have been able to move. And my son was
Right.
a free spirit. So he probably would have hated me if
Mm.
I would have taken the best care of him. Um, But it was a rough night. We had the trauma team in there all night long trying to get him to make it through. The following morning, they brought him down for another MRI. One of the biggest issues was he was in ortho and he had special braces. So I was in the dental field for over 20 years.
Okay.
And so he had these special kinds of braces and they couldn't remove them. And so with MRIs, you're getting like you're not getting a good image. So they couldn't really
Right, right.
develop that.
Because of the metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I have a little guilt on that because, for I was always on his case as a parent, like, take care of your teeth, do your homework,
Mm,
and he's like, I don't care about braces. And that, like, there's a guilt factor of, had I listened to him, like maybe they could have seen how bad the brain bleed is and maybe done more. There's always those questions of what ifs.
yeah.
Um, but on October 3rd, they told us that he just was not sustainable. So we had to make the decision. He wasn't going to survive. I did ask that he be an organ donor. His father and I have different views. His father believes in God. I'm more on the science end, so his father wasn't super comfortable with it, but I talked to him, we compromised. So my son did save several lives,
Mm,
being an organ donor. So I was already incredibly proud of him, but even more proud now.
yeah.
And I had to watch my son die twice. I watched my son die in the street on that video, and then taking him for his in the OR to be harvested. Um, I still have nightmares. I can vividly remember when with my background, his to his father, it sounded like he was snoring and going to sleep, but I knew it was his lungs filling up. And I remember, to be a donor, you get removed from life support and you have to die on your own within 2 hours. My son lasted for about an hour and 50 some minutes. And I remember when he took his last breath, the color of his nose, it started at the tip of his nose and then started spreading. And you could tell he was just not there anymore.
Yeah.
It was absolutely beautiful though. The people who showed up for his honor walk. This is who my son was. Um, it was the school security guard. He'd notice when she didn't make it to lunch and he'd bring her a smoothie. It was the parking lot monitor that the kids would tease, and he would stop by every day and say hello and just acknowledge him.
Yeah.
That's the kind of kid he was. Him and I got in a huge argument about a tattoo. I said no when his dad took him to get it. I cannot tell you how many people now have this tattoo.
In
um,
his honor.
in his honor. Um,
Yeah.
he made a really big impact. He had such good friends. Right before he passed, he was the certified welder. He was working on one of those big smokers, and he had finished almost everything except painting it. And his group of friends painted it, and they entered it into competition, and like
Um,
5 competitions, and it won first place.
wow.
Um,
So it sounds like, well, first of all, man, I don't even know how to respond to something like that. My heart goes out to you in a big way. Um, Part of his legacy is that you have started a foundation in his name And it's kind of like the smoker and the tattoos, where people are taking, a very tragic incident and turning it into something that's positive and maybe inspires others. And on this channel, that's a big part of what we look for, is to maybe help inspire people. Can you tell us a little bit about the Thomas LaFever Foundation and
Yeah.
what drove you to start it? I mean, obviously it was this incident that happened, but what was it that made you decide to do this?
So to be completely honest, the first 4 months I was sedated. I was in a
Yeah.
very dark place. I had plans to do things that I won't mention. Ugly crying, just not in a good place. And then
Sure.
I just had this epiphany that, you know, my son can't have died for nothing.
Yeah.
So I used to own dental offices, and then I started consulting. I released all my clients when he died, and I started the Thomas LaFever Foundation, and it's motorcycle safety awareness, CPR, organ sharing. Um, I really think we need to champion for that, because I know if he needed one piece, I would have wanted that to be available to me. Um, so for the people who do believe in God, your body is just a vessel.
Hmm.
So it can make a huge difference. So we're championing for that. And just safety, it's incredible to me how many people haven't taken safety courses, whether it's riding, getting the endorsement, or how many people don't know CPR, or how many people freeze. And I think it's because they don't have the tools, or they're
Mm.
scared. Um, so
Do you
I
kind of feel
decided to
that's what
start this.
happened with the people who are watching Thomas? Do you feel like, you said they got their phones out, but do you think did they freeze? I mean, I'm trying to
I,
picture what happened there, and I'm trying to put myself maybe in their shoes, wondering what I would do in that situation. But is that part of why you're doing this?
I've given CPR 3 times in my life.
Oh, wow.
Um, Twice to people that I don't know, once to my father. And so I think it just depends on what kind of person you are. But because I'd been in the field so long, I had those tools. I do think there's so my target age range for the motorcycle safety and the CPR is 17 through 25, because
Okay.
that's who's coming to take over the world, right? But really, it's for everybody. Like if you're younger, if you're older than that, that's fine. But I'm trying to get the youth. So I have tried to wrap my head around what would make them feel like that was okay, or the right thing to do. And I have speculations, but I just can't answer it. So
Sure.
I
Well,
guess that was part of why I said, you know what, let's get out into the community and do something, because maybe if the people have the skills, then they'll do something.
yeah. Carl, have you ever been faced with a situation where you had to act like that? Had to take action?
Yeah, I was certified because I was a lifeguard, so I was certified CPR, breathing, the whole deal. And we were on a youth trip with a youth group, and one of our students' kids drowned in a river in Minnesota, and we found him, brought him out, and he was, for all intensive purposes, he had passed away. His name's Jabbar, and we had to perform CPR and rescue breathing and the whole deal in the river off the side. And he was about,
Mm.
I think he was 12 or 13, and he survived. He had double pneumonia after, as you said, Kylie. His lungs filled up with water, they filled up with liquid, and so, but thank goodness he survived. But I think back to your question, Stan, and maybe Kylie, if there's such a shock factor in these situations, like I know because I have that training, I would have stepped in, right, to figure out how to get him out from the car and stepped in. But that's because I have the training. Had I not had, I'd be like, what the, you don't, you just, what I learned long ago is you can't talk about dark thoughts because I've been in some of those situations too. I never judge anyone anymore because I'm not in their shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just,
I had a situation once where this was at medieval times. Carl, we've talked about that a lot, but a man was choking on a piece of chicken, and he was given the choking sign. I'm literally in costume. I wasn't out performing at the moment, but then part of the reason why I'm asking this part of it is because there was I mean, I'm sure it was only seconds, but I sort of froze for a second because I'm like, is this really happening right now? Is this guy, does he mean it? Is this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Luckily I didn't freeze for too long and gave him the Heimlich maneuver and it cleared it. But I often wonder why I felt, and it was probably not as long of a time as it felt like, but there was that moment where I'm like, is this really happening? Do I really know what I'm doing? That sort of thing.
I think there's
So
also a factor of people being scared. Like, so when I'm teaching the classes, it's obviously laid back.
yeah,
You know, it's not high, like intense.
right,
But also I think people are scared because, you go through your life learning about accidents where you shouldn't move the victim because if they have spinal injuries, but if they're not breathing, I think it's important that people know that there's a Good Samaritan law.
right. That if you try
So
to help them, you're not going to get in trouble if you don't do it correctly or break their rib while you're
right.
doing the compressions, that kind of thing. Yeah, that
And
was an
honestly,
important
if you're
one.
doing compressions the correct way, the chances of you breaking ribs, they're high, but it's better than the alternative.
Sure. So one of my questions though, Kylie, is I learned CPR and the Heimlich maneuver and everything in high school, and I'm pretty sure I went to high school in Illinois. I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I think we all had to go through it as part of our PE classes. Uh,
I don't think that's a thing now, but I did hear something. I
is
can't
it
remember where I
possible?
heard it from, but I did hear something. Actually, it was a new school nurse who I was helping get certified. They are trying to bring back these programs into the curriculum, which would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we had to do it. Did you have to do it, Carl, in high school, or
yeah, I'm
just when you
pretty
became a
sure.
lifeguard?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of the simultaneous timing of, I think I was 16, 17 when I became a lifeguard and water safety instructor. Um, so yeah, I was about that time, but I do remember it also in high school, but I think it was an elective in my high school in Illinois. So, but it's an
I could
important,
be wrong, but I think we all had to take it. In fact, I remember the dummy was Annie.
yep.
I don't know if that's universal or not, but
That's
you're
that's
supposed to try to
still
wake up
that's
first.
still
Annie, Annie,
Annie.
Annie.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
still
So
there.
Annie's still doing it. Well, great. So Kylie, tell me how that. So I know it's all about motorcycle safety, CPR education, but how does that manifest itself literally? Where do you do this? Do people come to a place? Do you go to them? Tell us a little bit about how you administer the lessons.
Yeah, so I have formed a great relationship with my local Harleys here. Um, so we've set it up to, I've done a couple of events to kind of just spread the word about the foundation. Haven't done the CPR classes, but I just secured at least 2 times a year at each Harley, the Cowboy and Round Rock,
Hmm.
to at least do 2 times a year at each place where we'll do CPR sessions. Um, I don't think that money should be, that's why I became an instructor. is because I don't think money should be a barrier for people to have these skills. So if you
Mhm.
can afford to pay it, great. But, you know, with the donations coming in, if you can't afford to pay for it, then I'm going to sponsor you. And same thing with the motorcycle safety course. If you can't afford to pay for it, you know, the more money that I raise, the more people I can sponsor to have take that course. So I do throw events. I've had a couple of events at Round Rock, Harley Davidson. I did an event at Thomas's High School where we did do CPR and we got some people certified, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I met this amazing person who helped me become an instructor, Brad McCurdy. You know, when I reached out to him and I said, you know, this is what I want to do. Um, will you help me? And he said, yes, absolutely. He lost his, I didn't get to meet her, but everything I heard about her, she was lovely. He lost his wife last year. And so we kind of partnered. So, you know, one hand washes the other. So I've been helping him like so that he has student to ratio and trying to get his business going because I think his wife did most of the business side of that. And so he's
Okay.
trying to pick up where that was left off. So I've been helping him with that, and he helps me with my events.
Gotcha. Well, it's nice to have someone to work with on things like that. The motorcycle safety thing, I've been riding since I was a little kid. My first bike was a Honda 50. I wish I had that little indestructible machine to this day. It'd be a collector's item now. But I've taught people just uh, unofficially how to ride. And there's several things that I think are important. And I teach this when I teach someone how to ride one of my jet skis as well, is that the first rule of safety is, I say, is to pretend like you're invisible. If you're on that motorcycle, if you're on that jet ski, if you make every decision based on the fact that nobody can see you, that's the first step in trying to be safer because quite frankly that's where a lot of these accidents happen is other vehicles and things like that, they just don't see the motorcycle or the jet ski on the water kind of a thing. You and I talked a little bit about this too, but I want to get your thoughts on this because now you're riding an electric bike. One of the things that I like about like a Harley is the noise. It does help people know that you're there. So what's your thoughts on the quietness? It's got to be cool,
So
stealthy,
I
driving
have
around on the
thoughts on
electric
this.
bike.
Yes.
Okay, let me hear it.
So I had a rock climbing accident in 2019 and I've had my ankles reconstructed multiple times. I have a rod in my leg. So the idea behind it was that I wouldn't have to shift.
Mm,
Um, but as far as the noise factor, so someone recently, well, a few months ago told me you have to ride like everyone's trying to kill you. So
yeah,
kind of the same thing as being invisible.
similar. Yeah,
Um, but the way they make cars now, you know, you think that noise, people are going to hear you coming, but the way that cars are manufactured now, you don't hear as much
that's a
outside.
good point. Yeah, good point.
So, you know, I think you always have to kind of be on the defensive when you're riding, whether you have a loud bike or not. So the electric bikes, the loudest they get is when they're charging because the fans
I,
will turn on.
I really want to try one. I think I like cruising around on my electric golf cart because it's so stealthy feeling,
Yes.
I'd
If you're
like to
going
try that.
far, you really have to plan it out.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
be careful of your range. Another idea, I wrote a paper on motorcycle safety in college. And one of the things that I had suggested in that is that motorcycles should automatically come with a horn that's sort of like a semi truck horn. Because most motorcycle horns are beep, beep, right? They're not going to get anybody,
Yes.
but if it's a womp womp, you're going to get somebody's
Yes.
attention then. And I don't know why that hasn't been something that is on every single bike, but I digress.
Yes.
Um, so how's the foundation going? How are things progressing? How can people help you with it?
So I don't want to say that it's basically like a startup.
Sure.
Um, so it has been, I have certainly thrown in thousands more than I have raised of my own money. Um, and it's really about the principle. It's not, if I'm going to keep going. Even if I have failures, I'm going to keep going. Uh, my last event that I had, my oldest son, he was home and he came to the event and he said something that was so hurtful, but so true.
Hmm.
He said, "Mom, people just don't care." And because and there was some truth to that
Yeah.
statement because
Yeah.
you hear about this happening to someone else or you see it on the news, the amount of fatality, and I mean just in Texas alone, I haven't pulled numbers for other states, but I have for Texas, the fatalities, which technically have gone down this past year.
Mhm.
But I see it in the news every day,
Yeah.
like
You talking
something.
about motorcycle fatalities?
Motorcycles, yes. So, and I think people have, and I'm guilty of it myself. People have main character syndrome. They don't think that it's going to happen
Yeah.
to
I've
themselves
never heard it
until it
called that
happens.
before, but that is a great way to put it. We all sort of have that. It's
Yeah,
not going to happen to me. That happens to other people.
yeah,
I'm the main character in this movie of mine.
yeah.
Did I introduce you to Matt Delahousse, or did you meet Matt and Shelley? They're the owners, the main owners of the Lucky Rabbit.
I I believe I've met Matt briefly, but I'm not
Okay.
positive. I
Super,
met a
super
Matt,
great guy.
but I don't
Yeah.
believe I have.
Yeah, he is such a great guy. In fact, he was a guest on one of our earlier episodes as well. But the reason I was asking, he was there that night and he was on a crutch, but he had a very severe motorcycle accident a month or two ago. Broke his leg in a few places, had to be helicoptered out. Motorcycle safety. I used to kind of ride with him and some of his guys, and I would be like, you know what? Let me know where you're stopping next. I'll be 10 minutes behind you. I don't need to go fast to have a good time. And to Matt's credit, I, I asked him, I said, man, if you would have been going a reasonable speed, would you have wrecked? And he admitted, he said no. And kind of like what you're doing with what happened to Thomas, his outlook on it is, I think this happened to me so that all of us, meaning his whole crew that he rides with, slow down and get
Yes.
safe. Just riding a motorcycle by itself is inherently dangerous. So take every precaution. You don't need to keep pushing the envelope. That's my feelings on it.
It took me a long time after the accident to get back on the bike. It was
Did it
it was
really?
many months and there's still like a mental block, and I think that's one of the most important things is you have to have a clear mind. So I haven't ridden in a few weeks because I was in a car accident and banged up my back a little bit, but I got T-boned on the ninth. But um I finally got on it and I love riding. And that
Yeah.
was that was our connection. I don't think people ever get closure. I think that you look for connections. And that was mine and Thomas's connection is we love to ride and there's so many funny stories about it when we were riding together when he was riding with me behind me and I'm like Thomas, when I stop you put your legs down too. I'm a petite woman. It's
Yeah.
hard. I'm not very good with people on the back of my bike.
Yeah.
Um, but to finish your question about the foundation, I do have a website. It's thomaslafeverfoundation.org. Any of that donation, everything goes to the foundation. I take none of that. That will help people pay for getting endorsed that will help pay for people to get, whether it's just hands-on CPR or if they want to get certified, it'll help throw more events. So that's the way they can get involved and help.
Kylie, I want to share something that you shared with me earlier today, and I'm hoping this doesn't embarrass you in any way or anything like that. But I, for one, when I like to give to charity, I want to know that, it's the money's going to the right places and things like that. And you just said something, but you had told me that you had uh, not a place on one lake, but a couple houses on the lake. And this is the part I didn't mean to embarrass you about, but you literally sold your homes and moved into something smaller to help fund this foundation.
So I rented. They were very pricey. I definitely lived a different lifestyle than I do now. I drove a nicer car. I had a newer Mercedes. I lived on the water. Um, and now I live in a one-bedroom apartment and I drive an older Mercedes. And I have no shame in that. It's My perspective has changed so much about what is important in life. And when people are saying, "Oh, this is so important. We need to get this done." It took me a little while to grasp that, like, just because this happened, like, life continues, whether you're going with it or not.
Yeah.
But the things that people were saying were so important to get done seemed so stupid to me. Like none of it seemed important.
And that
Like
doesn't see, yeah,
my
what we think is important is it changes a lot
yeah.
when something real important happens. Well, I just respect the fact that you put your money where your mouth is on that, and that's something that I can certainly get behind. So appreciate you. So you
Yeah.
just mentioned this, and this is kind of what we do towards the end of these things, but we always ask our guests three questions. Carl, do you want to do the questions, or do you want me to do
Sure.
it?
Sure.
Yeah,
No,
go
I
ahead.
will. But I wanted to touch base just quickly on what you were talking about. I love that your foundation, Kylie, does a little bit of, just while we were here, looked up last 3 years, it looks like there's been around 6,000 motorcycle fatalities per year, up and down a little bit. So again, that's a lot of people, right? But in comparison to autos and all the rest, maybe that's why it's not getting attraction. But the fact that you're doing organ donation, my uncle was blessed to have a heart and lung transplant, and it extended his life for years after that. The fact that you're also talking about CPR that's going to save many, many more thousands of lives. So having all three of those is kind of a cool dynamic. It's not just motorcycle safety. It's all these three buckets that are all great life skills. I, like you guys, have been riding since I was, I think, 10 or 11, 12, just again, a Honda 50
Yeah.
on the dirt bike, and then got my, street license and all the rest. But it's just what's frustrating to me about, and a blessing in motors, the freedom you experience on the road riding is just something you
Yeah.
cannot explain to anybody. But the fact that most of these fatalities happen because of someone else's carelessness, not ours, right? We could be safe riders, we could be in control. It's this other person who's rushed, not paying attention. Again, that invisibility thing Stan was talking about is key. That to me is why I've stayed. My town has gotten a little bit busier with traffic and stuff. I don't want to even ride unless I'm out in the sticks. It's just not worth
Yeah.
it to me because people just don't pay attention, and that's maybe where they don't care. So, but
Well,
I
there's
love that.
actually, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, there's actually more. So this, my partner that, we help with the CPR classes, we actually started another entity.
Hmm.
We're calling it the Jana and Thomas Project. And I was looking at first aid kits and everything, and they're crap. Like they're not good. And then I was looking at the trauma kits and they are so expensive and they don't have everything that you need. And I talked to so many riders um, in Texas, out of Texas, and I was like, If you could have the perfect kit to have first aid kit, trauma kit in your bike, in your saddlebag, what would it include? So I actually created my own.
Hmm.
And so lots of things that'll be going through the Jana and Thomas project. We have these like face CPR barriers. Because if you don't know the person, you might not want to give mouth to mouth. Um, the regular CPR kits, the choking devices, like I'm sure you guys have seen these go
Yep.
viral, and
Yep.
then the one-way valve face mask. But this one is what I'm really, really excited about. So I saw kits similar to this on like just doing research, and you're looking at about $200. And it doesn't even include everything that I have in here. And I'm able to sell this for $65.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Can
And
you hold it up a little bit so we can see it?
yes, and I can tell you what's in it if we have time.
We do have
Sure.
time. Absolutely.
So this has, so when I started this, totally thinking biking community, but this could be used for hunters, anyone. Um, but it comes with the thermal blanket. It has the chest seals for gun and stab wounds. It has the nasal pharyngeal tube. So if there's someone's not riding, or if someone's not riding with a helmet and they have a face injury, you know, their tongue might swell up. Myth that you swallow your tongue. No, but it could swell up. Blood works as an excellent lubricant, but there's jelly in there. This goes, and a layperson can do this. This goes up your nostril and down so that you still have an airway. It has eye patches, a roll of duct tape. It has a tourniquet. It has the glucose gel. This is excellent for people who have like a diabetic episode. Um, Narcan. If you don't realize that we have a drug epidemic going on, you've been living under a rock.
Mm.
It has a roll of duct tape. It has a mouth barrier for CPR. It has a tourniquet, which it's not the cat tourniquet, which is the optimal one. Excuse me, optimal one. So if you wanted to replace that, those are a little bit more expensive. It has the close cutting shears. It has ice pack, bandages, gauze. I think I already said this, but a whole roll of duct tape, aspirin, burn cream, hydrochloride caplets. One of the riders I was speaking to, they said, you know, you go on a long ride, you get a stomach ache. Someone's gonna want that. Um,
Mm.
Sharpie marker. If you're giving someone medicine or if they were bit or anything, you want to be able to document or mark where they were bit for swelling or time for when first responders get there. Um, Antihistamine, aspirin if it's heart related. Um, it has so much in this little pack
You put a
that
lot of thought into that.
I did like I did so much research, and I spoke to riders and I said, you know, what is one thing, because I've met riders who've lost limbs, who've broken legs, or I spoke to families of riders who've fallen, and they said, you know, if this had happened, maybe they would have survived. So I put
Right.
so much thought in this, and then I went online and I'm looking at these different kits, and they're like $150 to $300. And I was like, people don't have that money, or they're not going to spend that money because, again, main character syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, they'll spend it on other things, or maybe they just can't afford it. Why can't I make something more affordable for people? And that's what I did.
Where can people get those? Can they get those on your website?
So there will be, this was just done. I don't have a button on there yet.
Okay.
But I am happy to give out my email. So if
Sure.
people want to email me, and get that kit, it's my first and last name, 1220 at gmail.com. So they're 65. If I'm mailing them to people, it's like I think it was like $14 shipping fee
Yeah,
because
that's
they do
really,
consider
really
this
awesome.
aerosol, so it costs a little more with the Narcan.
Gotcha. That is so cool, Kylie. Man, this has just been really inspiring and little heartbreaking too. Just but I'm just so impressed with people who can take things that happen that are just so tragic and find the path to helping others through that. So I congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
Carl, do you have any other questions before we go to our words of wisdom?
I do. Well, one of them is our words of wisdom question, which will be what would you tell young Kylie at 18? But we'll get on that second. How's your relationship been? And then I have a comment too. How's your relationship been with your older son now that it's just him? Has that,
So my older son is I don't mean to insult him. I am so proud of him. At 20, he bought his own home. He has his own car. He has a career. He did
wow.
exactly what he's supposed to do. He's very responsible. Um, he's very loving in his own way. But he doesn't have a lot of empathy and sympathy. He's very detached. We had a very good conversation one day. His dad called him while he was here, and he's like, "How's your mom doing?" And he's like, "Oh, she's moping and crying like she does every day." And I'm like, "Jake, like, it's true, but you could have said it a little differently." And he's like, "You know, it's not that I don't love and miss him, but if I get sad thinking about something, I just stop thinking about it." So he's able to like distance himself from that. Um, but he's been like that his whole life. And I'm like, you're not telling me anything I don't know. He was my rock. With arrangements and everything, the things I absolutely had to do. But I was just in such a state that I wouldn't have been able to get through it. Like he took care of all the stuff at the funeral home. He picked out the urn. He was just such a champion. And at 20 years old, he shouldn't have had to deal with that.
Yeah,
But he took it like a champ and he did so well. So he would stay once a week with me, just making sure I was okay, the phone calls. Um, it has been hard because he got called to mission early, and because of the accident, I just want to it's just me
keep
and
them
him now.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it's very hard having him gone. I probably shouldn't say this since it'll be broadcasted, but he's been sneaking his phone a little bit and shooting me. He can't tell me where he is, but he'll send a message just as like a check-in or to show me his goofy new shaved head. But so our relationship is the same, but I feel I'm not scared of much, but the one thing I am so scared of is losing another one of my people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's so understandable and appreciate your son's service
Yeah.
Thank
to
you.
our country as well.
Well, the reason I was asking that too, not to just to get some context, I lost, Stan knows this, we lost my sister when she was 38. So I've had to kind of from a distance watch this thing. And I think as guys, not make excuses for guys, we have the ability to kind of shut down and numb our hearts a little bit more than late. And I live with three women, so I deal with their emotions every day. So it's kind of that balance of being that rock for my mom and then also being empathetic towards her. It's a tough thing because I could easily break down with my sister's was a tragic loss like your son was, and so it's a hard thing to navigate sometimes. So yeah, good for him, and thank
If he,
him
if
for
he
his
does
service.
show emotion, it's in private.
Yeah,
I think even as a little boy, I don't think I've ever seen my son cry. Like besides for when he was a baby and couldn't
yeah.
communicate, I don't think
Well, I
he
think
ever
that's
cried.
generational. My nephew is the same way.
Yeah.
He lost his dad and his mom within a couple of years and never saw him cry.
Yeah. So
But
I think
man, maybe it's generational. I don't know.
I know he feels bad. He's mentioned, I wish I was a better brother. He was a fantastic brother. I mean, they had their brother stuff when they were younger, but retrospect, he wished that he had done more with him. But it's just, it's how it goes. If I'd known what I know now, I would have changed a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, Carl and I aren't even real brothers, and we still have that brother thing going on all the time.
Yes.
Yes. And
All
I'm not
right.
the big
Well,
brother, Kylie, if you know what I'm saying. Um, so yeah, here's
hey,
our words of wisdom. So it was a good segue. If you knew what
yeah.
you knew then, what you know now, what would you tell? We call this our wow question. It's just kind of words of wisdom, and doesn't need to be profound. It could just be something real simple. But obviously, you've gone through a lot. You've learned a lot. You've seen a lot. So what would you tell young Kylie, 18? Like, man, I wish someone would have told me this, so you could know this the rest of your life.
Um, that life is hard. You wait to grow up. Maybe not like teenage Kylie, but maybe 20s Kylie would have not been so eager for the boys to grow up and get out of the house. Because now I
Mm,
wish they were at home. But that life is really difficult, and you know, so not profound, but like just kind of a heads up, I guess. Maybe not wisdom, but a heads up that life is difficult, and that anything can happen at any time, and you're never going to be prepared. You can
yeah.
prepare. I'm a planner, and it's not foolproof.
No. But the thing is, life is hard, but you're living proof that you just keep up and you keep going, right? You don't
You
give
just
up.
have to keep going.
Keep
And
going.
that legacy now is going to continue on and help people for years and years and years, and help many other people through all the different facets that you're touching with safety and organ donor and health care and through the
And
CPR. So
this is not me. This The person who inspired me to do this is my son that passed away.
yeah,
He was so kind. He was so generous. He was so hardworking. Like just the most reliable person, so mature at 17. So so really I'm just doing his work.
Mm,
He is
it's
a
good work.
far better person than I will ever be. He did more than I will ever do. And the world is truly missing out on having him be here. So this is not me. This is Thomas, and I am just trying to finish his work.
Yeah. Well, you're
I'm
off to a
sure he's
great
very
start.
proud of it.
Great
Yep.
start.
Kylie, thank you so much for doing this and your bravery to come in and talk to us about this. Um, we will, I just want to mention the name of the website one more time. It's uh, Thomas LaFever Foundation.org.
Yes.
And Kylie's email address is Kylie LaFever 1220 at gmail.com. If
Yes.
you want to send her some encouragement, and that would include maybe some cashola encouragement to help with her work, we certainly encourage that. Kylie, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And I guess the only thing I could say is do something. If you're ever in this situation and you roll up onto something, do something. It might not work, but you could give someone a chance, because the hurt I feel every single day, if I can prevent one person from feeling that, then I won. Like,
Yeah. Well said.
yeah.
Well said. Well, I
All
think
right.
I'm going to close with this, if that's all right, Stan. I think
Go.
that little 2-hour conversation you had with your son was a miracle and a little bit of a gift. So maybe I have a different perspective, but I think that was just a miracle to happen and have, bless you with as a great memory. So, and I think as we get
Yeah.
further away from these tragedies, we remember all that good stuff. And man, he sounds like an amazing young man. And
Sure
I'm
does.
It's
Yeah.
cool.
Tomorrow he would have been 18. So usually he's harassing me for like 2 weeks before this weekend coming to buy all these illegal fireworks. That was his thing. And
Yeah.
I'd get him the ones that weren't as bad, but had I known, I would have bought out the whole stand.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. All right, Carl, good seeing you, buddy. Kylie, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for joining us for this edition of What Drives You. We will see you again real soon.
Thank you
Take
for
care, everyone.
having me.
Bye.